Hey guys, Loading Gears here. Welcome to my story series of Xenosaga the Animation, or as I'll be calling it, the Xenosaga Anime. For this video, or these videos, depending on how long this ends up being, I'll go over the story of the Xenosaga Anime. Or, well, not exactly. The Xenosaga Anime is pretty much just the first Xenosaga game, but in anime form. For that reason, I've decided that I'm going to do more akin to a review / discussion of the anime, while focusing on the story beats that are different from the game. Because despite the fact that it's based on Xenosaga 1, there are a lot of things that are different. However, I don't want to just retell the game story that I already did with Xenosaga 1, but the anime is different enough that parts of the story are worth telling. Plus, I think the anime is very underrated, as it does some things better than the game, so I'd like to bring attention to it. In other words, don't look at this as a different story series, consider this a companion piece to my Xenosaga story series. Anyways, I'm kind of going in circles now, so let's start this video before I confuse anyone. Episode 1, Awakening. The first episode starts almost exactly like the game. The Zohar emulator is found, someone gets sucked up, and then we go to the combat simulation with Shion and Cosmos. One of the differences in the anime is shown right here, other than the fact that the simulation is different, but that's to be expected since the simulation in the game was a playable area. Cosmos is shown as a giant metallic kind of box skeleton of a robot. In reality, this is what her pod looks like, as it apparently works as a type of armor or exoskeleton or a restraint to Cosmos in the anime. This is actually cool because it makes her reveal that much cooler when we finally see her, although the coolness of it is slightly undermined by the fact that most people who watch this anime are probably coming from the game, so they already know what she looks like, but it's cool nonetheless. Plus, I know at least one person who watched the anime first, so anyways. The encephalon scene ends pretty calmly, no malfunction or close call with Shion or Nephilim appearance, which is fine. It's not necessary as the pacing of the anime is faster than the game. In fact, we see Nephilim just a few minutes later in the scene where Shion is entranced with the emulator, and yes, Vanderkam is here too. Then we see Cherenkov, who is immediately introduced by having him talk to Margulis. For some reason, I've always thought they both looked weird in the anime, especially Margulis. He looks fish-like, and his eye randomly gets uneven in some shots, or his eyes do. And I fucking hate the way that they say Margulis in this show.
Commander Margulis!
At least they're consistently wrong about it though. It's not as annoying as when they say 3 different ways depending on who says it. The scene with Shion's report goes pretty much the same way. Cherenkov scolds her, Captain saves her, and then she takes some time off. However, during this scene, we meet one of the characters that made the anime so different from the game. That's this 100 series Realian, who catches Shion's attention. Or more on her later. After this scene, Shion goes to her room to rest, and we see the same conversation with Jin play out as we did in the game. Unlike in the game, Shion doesn't actually go to sleep, however. She rudely hangs up on Jin after he brings up his parents' memorial, which I actually find to be more consistent over a Xenosaga 2 character. I always found it weird how friendly she was towards him in Xenosaga 1, just to see her be a complete brat to him in Xenosaga 2. Anyways, she then heads off to the Realian maintenance bay, or that's what I'm calling it. Just like in the game, she works her nerd magic on them, but unlike the game, however, she encounters the same 100 series Realian here as she did in the bridge. She catches Shion's attention, again, so Shion walks over to her and asks her what she's worried about. Her perceptiveness seems to surprise the Realian as she's not hooked up to the monitor, but Shion can tell that she's worried just by looking at her face, despite her not being hooked up to the monitor. The Realian says that as a 100 series Realian, she doesn't need to think about anything but orders, but it feels more like she's trying to convince herself of this more than Shion. Shion tells her that Realians have free will and nobody, not even Realians, should have to think about only their orders at all times. As an act of kindness, Shion gives the Realian a bunny ornament hanging from her phone, which seems to attract the Realian's attention. After this, Virgil is introduced and the whole scene plays out pretty much the same way as in the game, nothing special here. Immediately after Virgil exits the room, an alarm sounds and the Gnosis make their anime debut. In the panic, we hear yet another name they pronounce differently in the game.
This is the cruiser Voglenda with the 117th.
The ship's name, Woglinde. Unfortunately, I gotta say, technically the anime says it more correctly since it is a German name. So Waglinda, or however they say it, is actually probably more correct than Woglinde. The anime does something cool here, something the game never did very well. They draw a difference between the aims and the eggs. It's a small detail, but some aims are fighting the Gnosis and get completely destroyed, and then Lewis shouts,
"Get those useless aims out of here! Eggs, 2nd Division, engage the enemy, split them up, and take them down. Listen up."
Because aims are just assault mechs, whereas eggs are specifically anti-Gnosis mechs. They also come up with the idea that Gnosis materialize and dematerialize in the real number domain in cycles as a way to give the eggs a way to destroy them without the Hellbird effect, which, okay, fine. I don't like that they're making up their own rules, but this one isn't that bad. It would have been a great opportunity to bring up the Klein point, however, which wasn't really explored in the game. The Klein point being a small point in a Gnosis that is vulnerable only if a great amount of energy is applied. It came up in Xenosaga 3 once, and it wasn't even dealing with Gnosis, it was dealing with the Hypersphere. Now we get our next big deviation from the game. For some reason, they decided they wanted to have Albedo show up in the scene. It's not a horrible thing, but I found the decision weird. As she and the Real head over to Cosmos, Albedo breaks into the Woglinde with E.S. Simeon crashing in through the ceiling above Xion, but the Realian manages to push her aside. As this is happening, we see something scanning the map of the Woglinde. It's Cosmos. And now we get our Cosmos anime intro, and it's fucking badass, man. The anime played it out to be a quiet, suspenseful, scary moment, which, don't get me wrong, once you know the story behind what happened in the past with Cosmos, it made sense. And this was pretty well done, especially on a second run through the game when you understood the context. But the anime went less for scary and more for badass, and man, it was badass. Just picture this, you haven't played the games. This is the first time you watch the anime. The only thing you know about Cosmos is that she's this giant, chunky, metallic robot thing you saw in the simulation. Then Xion comes under threat, you see the map being scanned, and you see this.
Well, at the very least, the restraints seem to be working right.
Oh no, Alan. That's just because she hasn't found Xion. But as soon as she finds her...
It's impossible!
Okay, I'm done fanboying. Sorry, but I love the way that it did this scene. It just makes it clear what an overpowered beast Cosmos is right off the get-go. Those restraints never held her. She just needed the motivation to get up. Anyways, this is the end of episode 1, so let's continue to episode 2. Episode 2, Imminent Defeat. After blowing a hole through the wall, Cosmos makes her way to Xion. The 100 series Realian gets up from the rubble and makes her way over to Xion. Do we really need to see her whole slow path over to her? Albedo then shows up, and we see how they really wanted to laser into Albedo's emotional trauma in this game, as he says,
"Can't you heal my pain? The pain in my heart from being abandoned by you."
It doesn't necessarily make him more sympathetic, but to us who play Xenosaga 2, it shows that they're trying to get across that he's using his emotional trauma of feeling abandoned by Rubido to justify how he treats the Kirschwassers. Yeah, I said it, Kirschwasser. As he approaches the 100 series Realian, he holds her and reverts her to her real form. She's a 99 series Realian. a Kirswasser. While in the game, he uses and abuses a lot of them, in the anime it seems like he took a liking to a particular one after a while. Lucky her, she gets to endure all of his abuse all on her own. It seems this little Kirswasser, let's just call her Kirsch, ran away from Albedo, which is part of the reason she's hiding as a 100 series Realian. We'll see the other part later. After Albedo threatens to crush Shion's skull, Kirsch, who's gone attached to Shion after such a short time, agrees to return to him. And with that, Albedo simply leaves. He just wanted his Kirswasser back. He didn't like being abandoned by her, which is interesting considering that his whole mission from Utic was to get the emulator, but whatever. After this, Shion is rescued by a combat Realian, and the story continues pretty much the same as the game. The bridge is destroyed along with the captain, Chenkov mates with his Utic buddies and takes over the ship, Shion mates up with Virgil after surviving almost being killed by the eggs, although this time it's a lot more realistic and doesn't rely on all of them being absolutely terrible shots.
You missed. All of you. Every single one of you. How is that possible?
Then the Gnosis attack, and the combat Realians throw Shion towards the eggs to save her, while the eggs shoot straight through him in order to kill the Gnosis, killing the combat Realian in the process, much to Shion's distress. Very reminiscent of Virgil's death scene in the game. After Horns and Lester are killed, the two random names that Virgil calls out in the game.
Hornst! Lester!
Yeah, the anime remember them. Anyways, after this, we skip straight to the moment when Shion is held by a Gnosis and she slowly turns to salt. And it plays out almost exactly how it does in the game. And I want to make this clear, because I saw a reviewer that absolutely shit on the anime and said that Cosmos' entrance in the anime was lame because it's just a little laser. My dude, it was almost exactly the same as the game. It too was a little laser in the game. Then the wall broke almost exactly in the same way. In fact, I go as far as to say that it was almost more badass in the anime because you didn't get that silly section where Cosmos looked like she was punching water because she was trying to fight unsolidified Gnosis. Instead, she went straight for the Hellbird effect and commenced to smack them.
The Hilbert effect!
What the hell?
However, the music in the game was still better. Something else to note. This scene also makes something very clear in the anime that I actually really didn't like. The Gnosis in the anime are absolute trash. That's why I said it's almost more badass, because the moment you realize how useless the Gnosis are, the badassery kinda dies. They just kinda sit there and let things happen to them. And when they do, they just shatter like glass after one smack. Hell, look at this. This Gnosis shattered just because another Gnosis lands on it. It really takes away from the threatening feeling of the Gnosis. I mean, it almost looks like Cosmos is bullying them because they just look like they wandered into a room and Cosmos started beating the crap out of them for no reason. Hey girl, oh god! Hey, what's going on over here? You can't, I don't even know where No way, stop, please! Hey man, what's going on over here? Room this way? Oh god, no! After this, they go to the hangar where the Zohar is and... Chenkov, yeah, he's gone. We don't have time for his story, so he's just gone now. Moving on. Unlike in the game, the Gnosis managed to take the emulator before Cosmos even arrives at the hangar. So, with the Gnosis threat now gone, Cosmos just shoves Alan and Shion in the escape pod and continues with their mission. Virgil also jumps in. Yeah, Virgil survives the Woglinde. So, we don't get Chernkov's character development, but at least we get Virgil character development. which honestly I thought was a way better idea for reasons I'll explain later, and I wish the game would have done this because while Chekhov's backstory was interesting and sad, I just didn't really care that much about it, and it didn't really affect the story as a whole. I also saw it just as a way of showing how horrible the life recycling act was. Just like in the game, Cosmo sets a tracking device on the Gnosis that took the emulator. The only difference is, this actually matters this time around, but later. Also, Virgil now holds onto the escape pod from the outside like Cherenkov did in the game, while Xion mourns the co-worker she lost in the Woglinde. She thinks of all the people she has lost in her life, Kevin, her parents, and now her acquaintances and friends in the Woglinde, and she begins to cry. A scene which I honestly loved, because if they made a second season with this anime showing the events of the second game, then this...
It's horrible! I can't stand this! I'm sick of all this! I can't take it anymore! I just can't!
would have felt like a much more natural character progression. Compare this to how she acted in this scene in the game. A ship full of people she knew was destroyed, and how does she act?
Don't worry. A rescue ship will come for us eventually. I'm more concerned about Cosmos. Now where could she be?
She's secure in the knowledge that they'll be rescued and just thinks about where Cosmos is. So this is one of those scenes that I think the anime handled much better. We are now introduced to the Elsa crew in almost exactly the same way as in the game, except this time, Chaos is already in the mix, which is disappointing. For reasons I'll explain in a little bit. By the way, Hammer is just as fucking creepy in the anime.
Hey, not only that, it's a girl body. She might be cute, you know?
I will make this brief, gentlemen. From this moment on, the navigation of this ship will be carried out according to my direct instructions.
Episode 3, A Chance Encounter. After threatening the Elsa crew, not by punching the window but by lightly caressing it, and picking up the signal from Shion's escape pod, we see for the first time Anime Wilhelm. This scene is almost word for word the exact same as the game, but we get a very cool view at the CG demo. Next we get a scene of Cosmos helping Shion into the Elsa. We completely skip on Shion convincing Cosmos to let them in. Instead she just helps them for some reason, even though she seemed determined to go on without them, but whatever, it's not that important. However, this leads to my least favorite and most jarring scene in the whole anime, Ziggy's introduction. Yeah, Ziggy is already in the Elsa, which again is understandable. They got 12 episodes to work with, so they got no time to show Momo's rescue. Probably the same reason why they cut out Cherenkov's story. However, Ziggy just decides to attack them as soon as they come in as a way to quote-unquote remove this burden from Captain Matthew's life? What? The fuck? What? It's so out of character of Ziggy. It's played out so villainous. Everything about the scene just seems like Ziggy's a villain. And it is so against his character from the game, where he was almost like a warrior monk. Strong and skilled, but calm and wise. I mean look, even the weird fingy wiggle he does seems creepy and villainous. Like, why? Maybe it was just jarring if you've played the game and already knew what Ziggy was supposed to be like, but I really don't like this and the scene that follows. It's just so unlike Ziggy. Speaking of, I also don't like his voice actor for the same reason. He's not a bad voice actor per se, he just sounds like a typical tough anime guy instead of the calm, calculated demeanor he had in the game.
I'll try, but I can make no guarantee. Petition the Galaxy Federation Contact Subcommittee about any damages.
Anyways, it seems like Ziggy's legit thinking he's doing Matthews a favor by getting rid of them, and it was just a miscommunication because, well, Matthews, even in the game, just kind of begrudgingly helps people. Like, he doesn't want to burden himself, but he also can't bring himself to say no. There's only two problems. One, when Ziggy tells Matthews that he's about to engage the target, he just kind of plays it off as an inconvenience.
Oh. Hey, if somebody has the time, could you bring peace and quiet back to my ship?
Like, my dude, people may be about to die in your ship, what? The second problem is that, again, this is very much not Ziggy. He wouldn't just kill someone because they're an inconvenience to someone. Ugh. Anyways, Ziggy and Cosmos start fighting as soon as Cosmos and Xion arrive in the ship. A fight provoked by Ziggy. And after Cosmos flings him around like a piece of silly putty for a bit, Xion, who was behind Cosmos inside of the escape pod, somehow outruns Cosmos, who was running towards Ziggy, and gets in her way to prevent her from stabbing both Ziggy and Momo. Oh yeah, by the way, Bumbo suddenly showed up to protect Ziggy. Okay. Anyways, let's just move on from this scene as quickly as possible. After everything cools down, Xion immediately noticed the resemblance between Momo and the 100 series reality that she met before. We then cut to the Pleroma, where Albedo meets with Margulis, or Margulis. Margulis seems angry that he didn't return with the Zohar, but Albedo corrects him, reminding him that wasn't even the Zohar, it was an emulator.
Right? Everybody knows the real Zohar lies at the bottom of the abyss. I believe it's in the vicinity of your last glimmer of hope.
Good to see Albedo can still throw them spicy bands even in 2D form. Aside from the fact that this wonderful line survived the conversation in the anime.
Ah yes, feed me your hostility. Come on, boys. Pierce me with your hatred while you have the chance.
I will shoot.
Nothing important comes out of this conversation with Margulis. Also, I really didn't like his voice actor. It doesn't sound threatening at all. After Margulis leaves, Albedo reminds Kirsch that the only place she can be herself without any danger to her life is with him. This goes into the other reason as to why she pretends to be a 100 series Realian, but more on that later. After this, we see the Elsa gating into a UMN column, and everyone introduces themselves. Chaos recognizes Xion's last name, Uzuki, because of Jin, which is something else I really liked about the anime. Having the knowledge of both Xenosaga 1 and 2, the creators of the anime were able to add some details in the story for the first game that could only be done with the knowledge of the events of the second game. Some are small Easter eggs, others help flesh out the characters more. This scene also contains a small interaction that I really liked, because now that they've kept him alive, they're able to humanize Virgil a lot more than they did in the game.
117th Marine Division. That's who I am, kid.
And I'm Captain Matthews. I was a Marine once too. I hope it don't bug you, but my days of respecting your rank are over, Lieutenant.
Sure thing. That's all right.
So...
It's not much, but the way he took that little joke and even smiled, I don't know. It just made him more of a three-dimensional character as opposed to the big ball of grump that he was in the game. There are more of these scenes in the anime I'll focus on, so don't worry, this ain't the whole thing. A lot of the following scenes are pretty much identical to the game. The differences aren't really worth noting. Chaos Crypt and Cosmos, Xion and Momo cook. Actually, I take that back. I want to point out here that Momo considers all of her mass-produced 100 series Realians her sisters. This was the case in the game too, but it'll come into play more in the anime. Through some chatter between Virgil and the Elsa crew, we find out that the crew obtained the Elsa through less than legal means, though they don't elaborate. Later, after more scenes that are not worth noting, the ship comes under attack by Utic ships. This scene is essentially the...
Ha! I can feel it, baby!
Jesus Christ, calm down, Tony. Anyways, the scene is essentially a replacement scene for the scene in the game when they meet Ziggy and Momo inside the UMN column. The ship they're being attacked by is led by Pellegrin. Xion wonders who built the ship, as the design of the ship didn't seem like a Vector design. And then Chaos reveals that the manufacturer was Haim's Heavy Industry. And because of this, he can confirm that they're fighting a Utic ship.
The supposedly extinct Utic organization.
Episode 4, Jaws of Death. This episode starts with a recall back to Ziggy's mission to rescue Momo. I'm not going to go over this because nothing nothing different happens from the game. We then come back to the battle in the UMN column where Tony loses control a little.
Warm up, then they'll eat stardust.
Hang on! You think you're going to run combat maneuvers in hyperspace? You've got to be kidding!
I'm not kidding. But you don't worry about it, all right? With Elsa's logic drive and my piloting skills, we've got this in the bag already! There's nothing we can't handle! All right now, logic drive full thrust! Here we go!
Watch out, Tony! If we hit the wall like this, it's all over!
Oh yeah, I don't care!
Oh God! We're doomed!
And he pulls the same maneuver he did in the game, where he scrapped the wall of the column to create a wall of fire behind him. Except, I guess this time they just did it to speed up? Anyways, Pellegrini starts trying to set a course to wherever they may stop for repairs. But then they are attacked by a certain ship. A giant, 4,000 meter long dreadnought. It's the motherfucking Durandal. It's your boy, Anime Rubido. And may I just say, I really like his voice. I prefer it in the game, and some people say his voice is a bit scratchy or annoying, but you get used to it and I really like it. Anyways, after Rubido mocks them for hiding away for 14 years, he retreats since he just wanted to get them off of the Elsa's trail. And here we get a little more detail that we can only get with the knowledge of both games. Rubido tells Mary and Shelly that once the UTEC ship loses them, they should retrieve the Elsa. And Shelly tells him that he will finally be able to meet Momo, to which he shyly says,
"Oh, nice. Just mind your own business, okay?"
I really like this because in Xenosaga 2 we saw that Rubido made a promise to Sakura to protect Momo. But we never see Rubido pay any kind of special attention to Momo in Xenosaga 1. I mean, yeah, there's the bracelet scene, but it comes off as just how they grew to know each other in the game, more than he already knew her and had a soft spot for her, you know? The anime makes it clear that Rubido knows who Momo is, and it happens one or two more times. But anyways, let's continue. In the maintenance bay of the Durandal, Cosmos wakes up and actually makes use of the tracker she implanted on the Gnosis after the Woglinde attack. Something that never came up again in the game. She uses it to transmit their location in real space to the Gnosis, somehow. Then, in order to meet them in real space, she damages the ship purposely, causing the ship's logic drive, yeah, that comes up here a lot too, radar and other functions to become useless or malfunction. So Cosmos calls into the bridge and informs them of their best option, which is getting out of the UMN column, what she wanted to do all along. So Cosmos damaged the Elsa in order to get her way without discussion. But nobody knows that it was her that damaged the ship. Once they get out, they realize they're in the middle of thousands of Gnosis. So yes, this is a replacement of that scene from the game where they get out next to the cathedral ship. And again, I like what they did here more than they did in the game because one, it actually made the tracker mean something, and two, it explains why they get it out way better than whatever the hell happened here.
Something is trying to come into contact with the ship. If this persists, we will be dragged out of hyperspace.
What's this? I sense... Huh? What?
Seriously, I'm still not really sure what the fuck happened here. By the way, no cathedral ship. There's no Cherekov, so the whole cathedral ship plot is kind of unnecessary. Hell, Ariadne is not even brought up in the anime. Cosmos then calls into the bridge, revealing that, yes, 'twas her who rigged the ship. Wahaha. Sorry, I was gonna read this like a normal person, but I don't know why I suddenly thought about reading it like this. Then, as they're about to give up hope, the Durandal shows up. This essentially went from the scene where they get in next to the cathedral ship, straight to the scene after the cathedral ship. The Durandal then does something that we only heard could be done, but the game never really showed us. It used all the 100 series realians inside it, plus the amplifier inside the Durandal, to create a wide-range Hilbert effect. Rubido unleashes the Durandal's torpedo. Ew, Rubido, what the fuck, stop. The Durandal manages to take out about 8,000 Gnosis using 80% of their ammo supply, but that's still only about a quarter of the Gnosis. So, as Rubido heads towards his eggs, Cosmos prepares for her famous scene. You knew this was coming. They weren't going to make a Xenosaga 1 anime without this scene. Cosmos takes an elevator to the outside of the Elsa. Her eyes go blue, and she asks Xion the question.
Xion, will feeling pain make me complete?
What?
Then she faces the Gnosis, prepares herself, and the fucking episode ends. Episode 5, Heteromorphic. Anyways, as I was saying, Cosmos prepares herself. I just want to say, I've had no problem with Cosmos' voice actress in the anime, but she played this line weird.
Will feeling pain make me complete?
I don't think she was told that she wasn't supposed to sound robotic while talking as Mary. But anyways, this scene plays out much the same way, except that Mary Godwin takes a lot of Rubido's line. Then, Cosmos opens her X-Buster cannon, which looks extra suggestive in the anime. And then, it happens. It's not quite as epic looking, to be honest. The music does a good job at setting up a really, I don't know, almost scary or ominous moment. I like it, but the X-Buster itself is underwhelming. Instead of a giant blast that swallows Gnosis, they went for like a laser that attracts the Gnosis. Cool little detail. While everyone is staring in awe, Chaos has his eyes closed, almost as if he's focused on something, like giving his power to her. After this, Rubido contacts the Elsa's crew, and this is when he gets his first look at Momo. As Rubido and Matthew continue to talk, Xion looks towards Cosmos, seeming concerned or even scared, as she slowly starts to realize how much she doesn't know about her and what she's capable of. Not just in terms of power, but this is adding up to the realization that Cosmos just put everyone on the Elsa in danger over her objective to get the emulator. This is all going to culminate very nicely near the end, and with that the game didn't really do very well. Before the Elsa boards the Durandal, Rubido spots the Zohar emulator floating in space and retrieves it. While everyone heads into the Durandal, we see Xion looking at Cosmos again with concern in her eyes. When the gang arrive at the Durandal Bridge, all the 100 Sirius Realians gather around Momo, seeing for the first time their prototype, and Momo is happy to meet some of her sisters for the first time. The sight of this makes Xion lament the fact that she couldn't bring Kirsch with her. Rubido then introduces himself to Momo, and Chaos reveals that Rubido was the one that set up the rescue with the Durandal with Ziggy. So in the anime, Ziggy didn't just come across the Elsa by coincidence, it was actually set up by Rubido, which again, I really like. It shows that Rubido didn't just forget about Momo for 14 years after Milsha. And it makes sense since the Kuka Foundation does a lot of work with the Contact Subcommittee. The rest of this episode plays almost line by line exactly the way the game does. We even get this.
Although I do not believe that the current situation called for me to act in an empathetic manner, I am pleased to be of service to you and the 100 Series unit.
The only thing worth noting here is that while Momo and Xion were talking in the park, Rubido was actually listening in on them in the surveillance room, smiling as Momo talks fondly about her dad. Then the episode comes to a close as they approach the Kukai Foundation, or as they call it here, the Kukai Foundation.
That's really it. That's the foundation.
Episode 6, Anchoragec. The meeting with Negredo is pretty much the same, but I just want to point out something that I thought was funny. It seems that the way that Xion noticed the resemblance between Negredo and Rubido in the game must have been too subtle, because in the anime, they decided to just make her say,
Junior? Grown?
I don't know why I found that funny, it just seems like an odd thing to say out loud. The scene with Rubido and Negredo in their room is pretty much the same too, but now Rubido actually brings up that Sakura entrusted Momo to him, and sympathizes with Momo as he realizes that nobody wants to be called the child of a madman. which then makes sense because then he says something that he actually said in the game too, but without all this context. He asks Grado to lay off of the Mizrahi talk. Much of the following scenes play out the same way, but I just want to note that I find it weird that Xian's flashback with Kevin, they made her voice oddly higher than usual.
Is it really? We should definitely keep an eye on that in case we're onto something new.
Almost as if to signify that she was younger, but she was 18 when she joined Vector, and she's 22 now. I'm thinking an 18-year-old sounds much different than a 22-year-old. Anyways, we later get a scene which I actually really like because it delves into the effects of the Life Recycling Act and what happened to the Life Recycling variants.
You know, the Life Recycling Act is responsible for a lot of this. Under it, genetic and cybernetic alterations were encouraged. So people with all sorts of special abilities were born. This continued even after the act was repealed. But by then, these specially enabled people couldn't find a place to call their own.
We gave up being pure humans, which in a sense makes us no different than Realians. We're no longer a part of society. We're simply its machinery.
And so the Foundation became a haven for all of you.
Excuse me, Chaos.
Please, don't worry about it. At least seeing the city for yourself was enough for you to understand, right, Alan?
It is, Chaos.
By the way, Rubido gives Momo a giant, creepy, two-faced bunny, which should look familiar if we played the game. Seeing the bunny reminded Xian of Kirsch, which gets her down again. Then we get a drawn-out drunken scene between Alan and Scott. By the way, Scott and the Professor are actually characters in the anime. This scene is kind of funny, I guess. And it may be your thing, but God, it just goes on and on and on. And when you think it's finally done...
That's weird. Did Alan go to bed? I want to apologize. I acted so badly before. I guess my timing was off.
No!
It fucking starts again! After all of this, we cut straight to the scene where the Federation arrests Rubido and the rest under false pretenses, and again, nothing new happens here. It's not word for word the same, but nothing worth noting happens. As the Federation attacks, the episode ends.